Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first ever interview for our new club. This is Alycia from Freestyle Canine, or I always say freestyle. I don't know why. Free
It's a
Life
good name
Canine.
too. Free life. Yeah.
And she is here to talk about NASDA, which is North American Sports Dog Association.
Yes.
So she's just starting in with them, and we're just going to get going. But Alycia, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up.
All right. So I grew up in Coquitlam, BC. So down in the Lower Mainland, and I don't know, early 20s. I moved to Surrey. I was there for 7 years in Cloverdale with my husband, and then we moved up to 150 Mile, which is Williams Lake area. For those not familiar with the Caribou, about 8 years ago. So that was our big move from the Lower Mainland. And yeah, so that's where I grew up, sort of city girl, but spent a lot of time outdoors.
Did you grow up with pets of any kind?
So I didn't have pets. I wasn't born into a home with pets. But from the time I could talk or gesture, apparently, I was begging for a dog. I did have one dog in my life that would have been my grandma's dog. She was a little Chihuahua, I think Papillon cross. Her name was TK. Her right behind me. Oh, other side. That's her collar up there. So my grandma had a dog, and I really wanted one. When I was 5 years old, my parents, I think, broke down and brought home their first dog, which was a yellow lab, a male yellow lab that we named Sandy.
Nice.
And then over the years, there were some other small creatures, fish. I had gerbils. I loved my gerbils. And we inherited a budgie. Yeah, so that was growing up with pets, not too many. Now that I live on acreage and I can do what I want, I have a lot of pets. The sort of farm appeal, like the little hobby farm, was always my dream as a child. I think it still terrifies my mother a little bit, but yeah.
So what made you decide you wanted to work with animals?
I like I said, I was just always into animals and pets, and also just all kinds of wildlife. My family was very outdoorsy, and we were always out on the boat. We lived fairly close to the ocean, so we were always out on the boat. Summer vacation included fishing and seeing orcas and dolphins, and lots of hunting trips and camping trips. So we spent a lot of time in other parts of the province in that sort of outdoor setting. So I was always just really fascinated with wildlife. And as a young child, I think everyone who loves animals thinks that they're going to become a vet. So that was definitely up there. I wanted to be a vet. Yeah. And then once you get a little older, you're like, oh, this is going to be really expensive and maybe not going to work. I wanted to be a police dog handler for quite a while. And then I think a horse trainer was in there. I did have horses briefly when I was a teenager as well, which I didn't learn until later was a really big deal to have horses when you lived in the city. So we boarded them at a stable. So I wanted to do something with horses. And then, of course, that was dashed too. Oh, that's really expensive. And then I thought maybe I would be a zoologist and I would work at a zoo or something. My counselors in high school, I think they were on strike in my grade 12 year. So they didn't do a great job. They were like, well, the only opportunity for you with animals is a vet, and that's sort of out the window because your grades aren't that great. And anyway, I ended up doing a fish wildlife program at BCIT for like ecology and wildlife and fisheries work. And I worked as a wildlife technologist for 10 years after I was done school. So not terribly glamorous all the time, but I did get to work with wildlife. Everything from very rare shrews and amphibians to waterfowl and otters, coyotes, those sorts of things. Usually we were trying to get creatures out of the path of construction before Portman Bridge project and those sorts of things. So that was my job for 10 years before we moved up here, and I was like a full-time mom for a while.
And now what are you doing for work?
So now I'm my business, Free Life Canine, has been, I think it's been a business for probably about 10 years. I've, for the last 15 years or over 15 years, I worked in some capacity as a trainer, usually some private lessons or working for other larger businesses and trainers that had like a brick and mortar sort of building, and I would teach pet dog classes there. My kids were really little when we moved, and so it was really a full-time job just looking after them. I still had my own dogs, did a little bit, dabbled here and there. About 6 years ago, once they were both in school, I started doing more, pursuing more education with dog training and making that almost like a full-time sort of occupation.
As full-time as it can be with kids.
Basically, yes, very split hours. These days my kids are, some people say, oh, once they're in school it gets easier, and there were a couple years it was easier, but now they're big, and they're both very involved in sports and hockey, and not dog related stuff, so that eats up a lot of time, but it's good to be busy.
So what made you get into the world of dog sports?
So that would have started when I was maybe 12, 13. That's the time I had horses. And I was doing like a bit of sort of showing with them. And once the horses were out of the picture, and I really wanted to get back to them, but it was I don't think it's going to happen for me. I cannot afford this on my own. I also want to go to college. Like, how am I going to balance this? I did lease horses like for a little bit and rode. But then I always loved the super dogs, and didn't really know much about dog sports other than like, agility that you'd sort of heard about. And where I lived in Coquitlam, there was no agility. All the agility was out in the Fraser Valley, Langley, Abbotsford. Too far away, and I don't think I was driving at that point. I would have been 17. And there was a flyball club close by. So I got into flyball with actually my second childhood dog. I was 18 when we got him. His name was Maverick. And he went to work with me. He was quite a busy, destructive, sort of typical Labrador retriever, needed a job, needed something to keep him out of trouble. And so I would take him to work on the wildlife sort of jobs, but also really got into this flyball thing. And he loved it, and he was very clever, picked it up real quick. I think 4 weeks, like maybe 4 practices. And they're like, hey, there's this tournament coming up. Do you want to give it a try? I think he's ready, which he was not. And I'm like, yeah, sure. This sounds like so much fun. So we got into it that way. And I was hooked on the titles and competing. I do not do flyball anymore. He was actually the only dog that I did flyball with. My subsequent dog, who is also no longer with me, he had shoulder issues when he was young. So flyball was not the most appropriate choice for him, but I started working into other dog sports once that sort of can of worms was open. that was what spurred it. I always loved competing with the horses. A bit competitive, a little bit of a title rosette junkie, as you can tell. And that's sort of what really spurred it off.
Cool. So tell us about the dogs you have now and what sports you do with them.
So I have 2 dogs currently. I have a 13-year, 5-month-old female lab named Mesa. And I have a nearly 7-year-old male named Cooley, another yellow lab. They're both from Minnesota. And they compete in a very wide variety of sports. Some of it's seasonal, especially now that we live up in the Caribbean where there's snow. And I've done everything with Mesa, the old girl. She just finished her 40th title last weekend, and that was a barn hunt title. But she's competed in competition obedience, rally obedience, draft work, which is carting, herding work. We've done tracking. I did years of agility with her, but she was the kind of dog that needed a lot more than weekly practices. So we actually never competed. Scent detection, trick dog stuff, herding. She's done some herding. Yeah, a lot of scent stuff is what we've done lately. Same with Cooley. He hasn't done too much Canadian Kennel Club stuff. So none of the hunt work. Well, he loves to do it, just not compete. And dock diving has been sort of dock diving, trick stuff, and scent sort of games has been his gig since he's been around. And part of that is demographics. It's just there's not as much that's accessible up here. I have to travel down to the coast for certain things. And yeah, so that's sort of what we're doing these days.
Cool.
Lots of options.
Okay, so tell us about NASDA.
All right. So NASDA, so North American Sport Dog Association. It's a relatively new organization in the grand scheme of things. It was started in 2016 in the US. I think Nevada is where it started. And it started, like the first trials in Canada were in 2017 in Saskatchewan. They've got quite a few clubs that are really into embracing some of these new scent sports. So what it's really about is about scent activities. It's designed to resemble historic working and competition field work as closely as possible. So it was originally designed to look like some of the Earth Dog tests, but to be accessible for all dogs. So if anyone knows what Earth Dog is all about, it is where dogs have to go through tunnels that are under the ground. There's liners made of wood so that nothing collapses on them. And there's quarry at the end of it. So in most places, that's rats. In Alberta, it's gerbils because they are a rat-free province. But everywhere else it's rats. But it was really limited to, I remember seeing it years ago, well over a decade ago, and thinking, oh, that's so much fun. That looks so neat. But it was really restricted to your terriers, dash hounds. Like there was obviously a height issue. Barn hunt came on the scene a while ago, which was for all dogs. But this North American Sport Dog Association is different in that it's not just ratting sports. So there's a few different streams available, but it offers opportunity for all dogs to engage in scent games that were previously really only accessible to certain breeds.
Cool. I'm excited. So what is the range of games that they have?
There's a couple more that are in the works too that I actually don't have too much detail on it, but the mainstream ones right now that are really growing are lost item. So lost item trials are where dogs are looking for items that the handler has misplaced at your lower levels. At the higher places, it may be something that another person, so a steward or your judge, has misplaced. So it's things like wallets, phones, gloves, hats, keys. So that's your lost item recovery.
Practical scent detection.
I know, right? Yeah. So it's similar. Like I used to do a lot more tracking too, and it has some parallels, some similarities to tracking, but certainly a practical sense. I mean, I have so many clients that say, "Oh my goodness, that'd be fantastic. I can't find my glasses. I misplaced my keys or my credit card, or I dropped this in the field where I took my dog to the dog park." So so it's kind of neat in that regard. And then there is shed hunting. So that's shed antlers. Mostly, again, which antlers they are depends on demographics or where you are um, in North America, basically. I believe down in the States, it's mostly whitetails, but that's just mostly what they have. What I've seen mostly in Alberta is just small mule deer or small whitetail antlers. You can use moose or elk, depending on where you're located. And so that's shed hunting. Obviously, it's usually out in a field. And then the other two ones that are related to quarry, and by quarry, I mean rodents, is called urban locate, which would be your search area would look like maybe a barn or a couple horse stalls, that sort of, not urban as in, inside someone's house. Hopefully you don't have rodents in there. I haven't seen it personally, but I know that there could be setups where it's like almost looks like a back alley, like those are like a basement. Those are places that it could be. And then the other one is called trail and locate, where the rats are still in a quarry box that's similar to Earth Dog. And it's outdoors, usually a field similar to what the shed hunting fields would look like. And we actually use a recipe to make a liquid or a spray called rat tea. It's rat litter, so stinky rat litter steeped. And then we use a sprayer similar like what you would use for weeds or something like that. Obviously not used for weeds previously. And we would spray a trail that would lead to the quarry, so lead to the rat. So that's usually a bigger environment. So it might be a horse pasture or a field or a park sort of thing. So those are sort of the, I kind of group like urban locate and trail and locate together, like the two sort of rodent, like quarry sports together, and then the shed hunting and lost item recovery. And I don't have too many details on it yet, but I know there's some stuff in the works about den hunting, which I imagine would be similar to Earth Dog. And then also blood trailing, which again, I don't know the details of what that's going to look like yet, but I know that they're working on it. So that's kind of exciting to have some new stuff. And there's numerous levels. Obviously things get more challenging as you move up the levels.
Right. So, okay. I also saw that a couple of them had online options.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So there are some online options for some of these, which is really neat. That obviously started with the pandemic, trying to grow some interest in some things, obviously, as well as give people some things to do. So for the shed hunt, you can do the first two levels. So level 1 and level 2, you can do online, which means that you would read up on your rule book. There is a separate rule book, and Barb's going to link all this stuff. There's some separate stuff about the online stream versus the in-person for shed hunting, although the title is the same. So you could have one pass from an in-person as well as online, and that would work towards your shed 1 title or your shed 2 title. The big difference between the two, in shed 1, the dog just has to be in close proximity to the antler, and in shed 2, they have to deliver it to hand. So they do have to retrieve it. But in terms of how large your search area is, it's fairly similar. And then the other online stream is lost item. So you could work through pretty much all the levels of lost item online, all the way through to a championship level. And that's sort of the similar thing. There's some video examples online. Again, we're gonna link some of that stuff so you'll be able to see it so that you can visualize it. But it might be your rec room downstairs or a garage, and you've dropped your keys or a credit card, those sorts of things, and your dog goes to find it, and you film it all, send those in, and you're able to get online titles that way.
Cool.
Good. It's a good winter project. It's something that it's on my list, top of my list. Now that there's too much snow to do shed hunting.
Yeah. That came really fast.
It did. Yeah, it did.
So when we were talking on the weekend about this, you said one of the differences is that the judge for this is the one that calls the hide. So can you explain how that works?
Yes. So I guess I shouldn't presume that everyone's sort of familiar with scent detection and barn hunt. So I'll just like a bit low down to that. In barn hunt, you're looking for rats in tubes. There's straw bales everywhere, and when you think that your dog has found the tube that contains the rat, or if you're doing scent detection and there's a row of boxes and your dog is searching and you think that your dog has found or indicated on the box that is the correct one that has a hide, you as the handler in those organizations would say alert, or in barn hunt we say rat, and then the judge tells you whether you're correct or not. So it's either a yes and then you can go and reward your dog, or it's a sorry. In barn hunt, it's very sorry, no, that's not it. And so it's up to the handler to make that decision as to whether or not their dog has indicated to them that they've found what they're supposed to be looking for, what we think they should be looking for. And in NASDA, it is the judge that tells you whether or not they'll give you a yes. So for example, in, we'll say urban locate, maybe we're in a horse stall, and in most of these the handler also can see and knows where the hide or the quarry is, so you'll be able to see it, but you cannot hint to your dog like, oh, like right there, go and look at it. You kind of have to be subtly, clueless. And once your dog is close enough to it, and once the judge feels that they have shown interest in it, or they've gotten close enough to it that they've noticed, then the judge will say yes, and then you will go and you can reward your dog however you feel appropriately. You can have food with you, just like with scent detection. Barn hunt, you cannot. There's no external reinforcers on you in barn hunt. But in NASDA, yes, you would have treats or a toy or something like that, and you can reward your dog.
Well, that sounds fun.
It is fun. It takes a little bit of the pressure off.
Yeah. And as a judge, it's probably more fun too, because you're judging the sort of the dog, not the person.
Yeah, it's different. Like I've judged numerous things to do with scent. You're always I'm always sometimes surprised by body language of some dogs, depending on what they're searching for. There's a lot of dogs that are unsure about quarry, so about rats or gerbils, and so their body language can be very interesting. A lot of them will avoid things. But it's always interesting to do that. And so you have to have a plan in your head about what's it going to look like when the dog is like, how close do they have to be, or what sort of change of behavior do I need to look like? Like oftentimes it'll be like a head snap as they go, as they trot past a wallet that's sort of dropped on the ground, and then so that's a change of behavior. So yeah, that's what you're looking for.
Cool. Let's see. We will have another thing for questions later, so I'm just trying to think of my questions now. So can you give a quick overview of sort of what your dog needs to know to be able to get started?
Yeah, for sure. So in shed hunting, ideally they'll have seen antlers before. Like I said, there's dogs that, like in the first level, they do not need to pick it up. There's a lot of dogs that are not comfortable picking up antlers, just maybe because they're hard or they feel weird in their mouths or they've been poked before. So they're sort of unsure about that, but they need to understand that there's some value for that item that is out there. A lot of dogs are drawn to them naturally. We also do put, do I have it on me? No, where is it? Oh, here we go. The antlers are scented. So they do have odor on them. So this is a little product called Rack Wax, which makes me laugh every time. So that's like, it's like a tube of chapstick sort of thing that's got It's got a smell of bone, probably a little bit of blood and hair. So that's supposed to be the smell of when a deer or a moose or an elk, so an ungulate, sheds their antler naturally. There is some blood and tissue and hair and that falls off of it as well. And so this is supposed to simulate that scent. So all the antlers that are in competition do have odor on them. So they are kind of looking for that. But most antlers, like I mean, most of us have probably seen them in pet stores, advertised as chews and enrichment sort of products. So for a lot of dogs, they are quite reinforcing in themselves, and so a lot of dogs are drawn to them. But I will play some retrieve games, show interest in the antler or a piece of antler. So they do kind of have to have an idea that this is what we're looking for out in the field, as opposed to squirrels or birds or things like that. There's some great instructors out there that have some online courses and webinars with introducing dogs to shed hunting to begin with. So that's cool. Potentially what I would start with. You can use antlers like ones that you find in pet stores, but sometimes they don't have a whole lot of smell to them. A lot of them are bleached. And so they're not going to be quite the same. Really, you would probably want to ask around depending on where you're located. Antlers are a tricky thing because they are not supposed to be traded sometimes, just because they're an animal product, depending on which province you're in. So I'll usually put a post on Facebook and, has anyone found any shed antlers? Like, truly the best training product you can have for this game is antlers that were shed. And that are quite fresh. Those are the ones that smell the best, and they're the most interesting to dogs. So I'll ask people for those, and the really, really nice ones people don't usually want to give up. They're pretty fancy. But sometimes I'll get old ones. Again, even if they're old, I can put the odor on it. This you can find at Cabela's. You can order it online at Cabela's. Maybe you'll make a link or something for that, Barb. I'm not sure if that's what people are interested in, but that's usually what's being used is this rack wax product. You can use the pet store stuff. Like if you don't have a friend that has a shed antler or something, but you just need to have like some odor to pair it to. Otherwise the dog's not going to really understand what we're looking for. That's how I would get started with shed hunting. I don't have them retrieving right off the bat, because again, a lot of dogs are unsure about picking things up because they're hard, or they might get poked in the eye. Now that I'm thinking about it, I have all this stuff in the office. Hold on one second. It's like right there. Here's another fun thing. So this is like a rubber. This is a rubber antler.
Oh.
I don't know. The texture is kind of like a wobble or a Kong or a soft nylabone, really. Like, right. Your dogs will chew this. These are available on Amazon and other places as well. I really like to start new dogs or inexperienced dogs on things like that. And what I like about them is if they pick that up and it pushes, if they go to pick it up, if you have a really eager retriever and they pick up a real shed antler, then sometimes they get poked. And then they say, I don't want to pick that up anymore because it poked me in the chest, or it felt really funny. And what's nice about the rubber ones is that they're soft and they're flexible. So we can build that desire for searching for those. And I mean, I put odor on them. Build that desire without the chance of them accidentally hurting themselves. And for some sensitive dogs, they would say, I don't want to go near that thing anymore. So those are some of the things I use for shed hunting. For lost item, so things that smell like us. This is an interesting one, and there's some different trains of thought, because really, like, everything smells like us. Right. Everything. There's always some residual sort of odor. The way that I train lost item recovery, I've done tracking. So it is similar in that regard, in that they're looking for some sort of article or something that I've left behind. It's also similar to competition obedience, the utility exercise, which is our scent articles, where there are numerous dumbbell-shaped retrieve items out. And because I carried them to the show, and they were in my vehicle, they all smell a little bit like me. But the judge, before you compete or before you do the exercise, they give you the one that they want you to send, and you rub your hands all over it, and then they put it out for the dog to find. So really what they're looking for is find the thing that smells the most like me, or smells most recently like me. And I'm not sure if anyone's ever tried this before. I mean, this was a long time ago. Yeah, this was when I lived in Surrey. I remember being really fascinated. I don't know why. We were taking a walk in this park somewhere, and this was a previous dog of mine, Dune. And we didn't have any things to throw for him. I don't really like to throw sticks. Sticks make me nervous. I didn't have any bumpers, and I don't know why my husband picked up a pine cone. There's all these pine cones everywhere. Here, I'll throw a pine cone for you. He threw this pine cone into a huge pile of pine cones, like hundreds of pine cones. And the dog would sort of sniff to work and would find the pine cone that was the one that we had thrown. And we're like, that's so funny. Like, if this was about retrieving just anything, you think you would just grab the first pine cone that you came across. But no, that wasn't something that was really taught. Some dogs do it quite naturally. I think this is part of the reason why a lot of dogs are drawn to our dirty laundry and like our shoes and things like that. They really smell like us. And so I thought that was so neat. We tried it a couple times with the pine cone, like, okay, let's try this again. Maybe that was a fluke. And no, he would go and find this same pine cone and bring it back every time. So I'm not sure if anyone's ever tried that or seen that. I don't think it was unique to that dog. I think it's something that a lot of them naturally do. So really what we're trying to teach the dogs is find the thing that smells like me, or smells most like me. So the one thing that I'm worried or concerned about this one, I've got one child here. Do you need something? Okay. Sorry. She's just poking her head out. Maybe she doesn't want to make an appearance. So the one thing that I think about with this one when I am starting dogs on lost items is I try and find maybe a room in the house. I know everyone's got different setups. I use my basement or my garage. My dogs, it's not part of their main living area, or maybe you use a spare room or something that isn't something like a place that you're frequenting all the time. My office, for example, just has so much stuff that I'm probably touching so frequently. Same with my kitchen. I don't usually start teaching lost item or this. It's a scent discrimination game is what it is. Try not to teach it in places where there's a whole ton of my scent and things that I've touched. So I'll go to a space that, like I said, a spare room or a basement or whichever that doesn't have a whole lot of my odor. And I might have, who's speaking? Is that Toby?
Toby.
Of course it's Toby. I might use something like I don't know, an old eyeglass case. I kind of, now that I'm doing more of this lost item stuff, I'm collecting a lot more things. I've got, my old cell phones and cameras and old like wallets and change purses and things like that. So I'll pick one of those items maybe. Leather's one I like to use. So cloth or leather, those usually hold quite a bit of our odor. And our odor is all consistent of our skin cells. We're shedding millions of skin cells every single second, which is,
gross.
I think it's cool. Maybe gross for some people. But so that's what constitutes our odor. So leather and cloth, some of those more porous items our odor would cling to it better than, say, metal, for example. So the first ones I might use are going to be cloth or leather, maybe a stinky sock or a hat. I mean, my hats probably smell like a lot like me. And I might just put it in the middle of the floor in a pretty obvious place, right in front of my dog. And if they show interest in it, if they know a marker system, so a yes or a click, I can mark them for that. And then usually before I know it, they're, some dogs will grab it and retrieve. Depends on the dog. Sometimes I encourage it. Sometimes I don't. Some I don't want picking up, all sorts of things. But before you know it, usually they're doing like this nice like head dip or like a nose press to it, and I can mark and reward for that. And then I gradually make it a little bit less obvious, where it's not just a hat in the middle of the room. Maybe now it's sort of along a wall somewhere. Maybe now it's kind of tucked in a corner. And then once they get really good at that, I might move it to a room where it's a little busier with smell, if that makes sense. Probably one of the hardest surge areas for my dogs to do something like this would be like my bedroom or the kitchen. That'd be a tough ask. They can still do it. And I mean, this something I did as a kid, I remember was, we're gonna hide a toy on the dog. Like, who hasn't done this? Like, we're gonna hide the dog's ball. And I remember like, where can we hide it? Can we hide it in the couch cushions? Can we hide it like in the basket of laundry, whether it's dirty or clean or not? Can we hide it like behind here? And most of these dogs will go and find it. It's a fun game. And now that I know more about scent and how it all works, it's like, this is really, really fascinating. Although I always kind of wonder, like, I remember it was like a vanilla smelling ball we always used to hide. Do you know the Orby Tough stuff, Barb?
Yeah.
Like they made, it was a holiday promotion. It was a snowball, like this
Cool.
like white Orby snowball, and it smelled like vanilla. And I thought it was cool. It appealed more to me because it smelled like vanilla. But I remember hiding that thing everywhere. I'm like, it's raining out. It's gross. Like, what am I gonna do with you? All right, let's stay in the other room. Dog, you stay there, or husband, hold on to the dog, whichever, depending on their skill set. And all right, I'm going to go and hide it somewhere, and then the dog has to go find it. So, I was always under the assumption, he's looking for the smell, looking for the vanilla smell. I don't know for sure. I mean, maybe it was my smell. I was the one that touched it last.
Yeah.
So I find that fascinating. So that's lost item. Lost item is not like scent detection, where your item or your scent is hidden. It is supposed to look like, I usually try, this is what another judge told me. And they kind of sort of come up with a story. Okay, I walked through my front door and down the steps to my truck. And when I was putting my keys back in my pocket after locking the door, my change purse fell out, and it fell right there by the door. Or I was digging through my purse to try and find my keys, and a credit card fell out or something. And that's sort of what it's supposed to look like. It's not supposed to be, my scarf got, stuffed in the back of this cabinet or behind the refrigerator. So I find it different in that regard. It kind of plays with the handler's mind a little bit. I've seen that. I've only been able to go to a couple trials so far in Alberta. I traveled to Alberta to see them. NASDA is not in BC yet. And it was interesting to watch some of the handlers be a little thrown off by, it's right there, like it's so obvious, it's right there on the floor, and their dogs seem to just blow past it. Partly is because some of those dogs didn't really know quite what the game was, what they were looking for. But it plays kind of tricks on the handler when it's so obvious to you, but the dog doesn't know what we're doing yet. So that's a little bit of lost item. In the beginning levels of all these games, there's only one hide. As you start to get higher up, there will be multiple, depending on the levels. And then with urban locate and trail and locate, hardest part about these activities is having access to quarry or to rats. So not everyone's cup of tea. I really like gerbils. Again, I had gerbils when I was a kid. So I was really hoping that, like, oh, maybe if Alberta's allowed to have gerbils, we can do gerbils everywhere else. But no, both NASDA and Barn Hunt have said that gerbils are only allowed in Alberta, and rats have to be everywhere else. So after wearing my husband down, I have got quite a collection of rats. I told my old dog Mesa long time ago. She was introduced to Barn Hunt when she was about 2 years old, and it was her most favorite thing in the world ever. She just loved it, like came unglued. And I said to her, yeah, this is, because she can understand me. When you are kind of retired or whichever, like, we are going to do more of this ratting stuff because you just love it. And we did. We've had a lot of fun doing Barn Hunt, and then now NASDA. But you need to have access to rats. You cannot just take rat smell. I know in the beginning stages of even Barn Hunt, there are some people that want to try and get into the sport, and they will access rat litter, someone that has rats, or any sort of like rat smell. I mean, I've even heard of some people like stuffy rats that maybe they like smells like real rats. A friend has a rat. I don't know. Trying to mimic what the real thing is, but there's not really a substitute for it, unfortunately. Dogs that are trained on just the smell alone of like the litter, for example, can become an issue, because as you move up in the levels, there are false quarry boxes, which means that there are going to be boxes that, and this is something, I'll get you a picture of what the quarry boxes look like, Barb, so you can post that up there too. I didn't bring one inside with me. They're wooden boxes. They're about, I don't know, 7 inches by 7 inches. They're double wire meshed on the front so that the rats are safe and the dogs are safe. That is the highest priority with any of these sports that we do with rats. They are my pets. I actually have a couple in my office with me now. They're very shy little girls, so I'm not good. That's why they're in the office. So they're kind of getting socialized before we do some hunting stuff with them. But they're spoiled rotten. They get so many treats and food and toys and cute little cubbies and castles my kids built. Anyway, they're little pets. So we take really, really good care of them. But yeah, there's not a substitute. You do not want to train your dog on just rat bedding. Because like I said, as you move up into higher levels, there's these false quarry boxes that have just litter in them. And you do not want your dogs searching for those. You want them to be searching for the live rats. And that is another big difference between NASDA, for example, and Barn Hunt. Barn Hunt, the rats are in tubes, so heavy PVC pipe tubes. They're all drilled, lots of ventilation. You do not really see the rats. Like, the dogs can't see the rats. If you get really close to them and hold the tubes up, you can sometimes see like a nose and whiskers. But in NASDA, they are in these quarry boxes, and you can see them behind the grate. There's always 2 rats in a quarry box. So they have a friend in there. And yeah, so it's, unless you have rats and you have the proper safety sort of set up and boxes for them, they're pretty difficult to get into on your own. If someone has like a Barn Hunt club close to them, then that's something that could help you out, even if maybe you don't compete in Barn Hunt. Most people that have Barn Hunt clubs or have done intro to Barn Hunt clinics, most of those people have quarry boxes, or they have earth dog boxes, which are similar to them, or they might have little Rubbermaid totes. Sometimes we put them in that have ventilation. We usually set up an X pen around it or something so that, again, rats are safe from the dogs, and you can introduce them to rats that way and get them sort of worked up. A lot of dogs are afraid of rats, or they have previously been maybe scolded or gotten into trouble for chasing small animals. So, if you have a pet rabbit, or, you don't want your dog chasing the squirrels, and you've gotten after them before, there's a lot of dogs that are unsure about what to do when they get into that smelling the rat. There's a lot of dogs that try and avoid it. So they'll say, I'm going to stay away over here. Other dogs, they know what to do, and they go right into it. But yeah, the first sort of step in those ones would be introducing them to rats in a positive manner, in a safe manner, and seeing how they're able to do with that, and then go from there. It's very different strategies that I would use with dogs that are nervous about rats, as opposed to dogs that just go right in and know to try and hit the Cory box, as we call it. So they'll try and dig, some try and chew. Again, this is why we use very, very heavy plywood and double wire. There's two layers. So the rats can't even get close to the outside of the box. So in case there's teeth on there, yeah, we're as careful as we can be, for sure. Keep everyone safe.
Cool.
Yeah.
They all sound so much fun.
It's really fun. Yeah, I really enjoy it. Yeah, they're all very different. Like, there's a lot of people that will compete in all of the above, and then some are just really interested in lost item. Maybe they're coming from a tracking sort of background or a scent detection. There's a lot of people that come from barn hunt and then switch over to the urban locate or the trail and locate. So it really kind of depends, but all of them involve dogs using their noses.
Cool.
And I would say that out of all of them, like, looking for rats is probably, for most dogs, like the most appealing. Just, I mean, you think about a rat potentially moving or running away versus like an antler that's just sitting there, or a wallet that your silly human has dropped, sort of thing. So yeah. it all takes some training, and also like recognition of what your dog's change of behavior is, and those sorts of things. So like this lost item, for sure, I know that now that it's winter, I'm going to be doing a lot more of it, I think, just because it's something that I know my dogs will like to do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This time of year, anything we can do inside.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, trialing in Canada, what can you tell us about that?
So it started, the first trials in Canada were in Saskatchewan. There's a couple clubs there. They're very active. Considering the population in Saskatchewan, there's a lot of dog sports. If someone said to me, like, you have to move to a different province, I think maybe for that reason it would have to be Saskatchewan. Like they do a lot. They do a lot of fun stuff. And in Alberta, I want to say that, what are we, 2002? I think it's been picking up steam in the last couple of years. Obviously, COVID put a big kibosh on a lot of stuff when it came to travel and holding events. So that was an issue regardless. But yeah, there's quite a few clubs in Alberta now that are offering trials every few months. Not all clubs offer everything all at the same time. And I imagine that's going to be the case as things grow. We're just not going to have time to be able to offer like all the levels. I'm hoping to bring it to BC in spring 2023. I'm really, really hoping to, because it is a lot of fun. It has some different requirements than some of the other sports in terms of venues and space, and I think it's a little more user friendly in that regard. So wouldn't surprise me if there's a couple of colleagues of mine down in the Lower Mainland that are going to try and get it going too. So that would be great. Sort of like that's what's happened in Alberta, is they're trying to get more clubs and people going, so that the people that initially got it all started, then they can go and compete and play and do it that way. But it's certainly, from what I'm seeing in terms of growth, it is one of the larger, like the faster growing sports that's out there right now. Just because it has, again, the scent sports are just huge. In terms of training, depending on the dog, there can be very minimal training, and you can try those entry levels, like level 1 sort of things. As you get higher up, obviously, you need to do more practicing and more training. But it's I think it's a little more user-friendly for novice dog sport people compared to some of the other sports that are out there. So I think it's something that we need to have here.
I think so too.
Yeah, I really, really do. I really like it. I've been following it for a few years, quite a few years, and then obviously COVID, and then some personal like health stuff sort of really wasn't able to do some traveling to go and check it out and see it. But now that I have, I've been back to Alberta twice already this year to volunteer and help and even compete. I'm just, the fire is lit. Yeah.
Well, that's exciting. So for those of you that are listening to this that are members, in the membership portal, I will start adding in information. We'll put in some videos of some runs so you can have an idea and see what that is, and then how to register and find trials, and all that information will be in there. I'm excited to dig in more and see it. And
yeah, it's because it's still so new. That's why I had to go to travel to really visualize it. I've competed in a lot of dog sports over the years, but until you've actually seen some of it, it's hard to. I look at it from a different lens. I'm a judge for numerous organizations and different sports, so I like to be on both ends of it. I like both competing with my dog, because that's a different feeling than judging, as well as going in and doing the setups for the trials and judging or shadow judging and things like that. So I'm on my way. I am an apprentice judge for NASDA, so I'm working towards my full judging. So it's a lengthy process, more so than some other organizations, but that's good. And it's part of when we have an organization that's continent wide, there needs to be that continuity. So it's really what they've tried to do right off the bat, which I appreciate also, because there's been other organizations I've been involved with where it was just when they were tiny and small, there wasn't as much thought to that. And then things kind of went a little silly in some regards when they grew, and huge growing pains. So there's growing pains with every organization. But I really like this. I like the direction that it's going. I like the people that are involved so far, that I've met, like a lot of the higher ups, and then like local, like here in Canada and from Montana and other states. There's a lot of people coming up from the states to come and compete in Alberta. So I really like that. I love their database. So once you have to register your dog in this organization, whether you're doing online like lost item or you're competing in person, your dog does need to be registered. So it's a one-time registration fee. It's $25 US. It's really quick, although that could use a little bit of work the way that they do it. So you pay online. I think it's PayPal probably, because we're in Canada. And then you get like a confirmation email back, and your registration number is like actually in that confirmation email, which I didn't realize. And it's like 3 days later, and I'm like, oh, how come I haven't got my dog's registration number? I'm trying to enter this trial. And they're like, no, it came like as soon as you paid. I'm like, oh, okay, it's right there. But their database, in terms of being able to look up your dog's stats and everything, is phenomenal. I should talk like maybe briefly about how the titling works, because it is a little bit different than, say, CWAGs or Barn Hunt or CKC, or a lot of those different organizations where you have a queue. So like those of you that are familiar with CWAGs, for pretty much all of your titles, You need 4 qualifying scores to title, unless you're going for ace titles, and then you need 10 in addition. And Canadian Kennel Club and AAC, Barn Hunt, a lot of those you need 3. So you need 3 cues, and then you get your title for that level. So with NASDA, it goes on a point system. So for each run, you need to have a minimum score of 20. You start out with 25. So it's not a pass or a fail. It's not a pass or a fail, which is like pass and fail would be Seawags is pass or fail. Barn Hunts, pass or fail. So it is points. So there can be deductions for dropped food or for out of control dog or some of those sorts of things, like lack of control. So there can be like tight lead, like leading your dog. Like there's a bunch of different deductions that could be possible, but you start out with 25 points. If your run is clean and it goes really well, then you get your 25 points. You need a minimum of 20 to get a qualifying score. And for like the level 1 titles, to get a title, you need 100 points. So if you do 4 runs and you don't have any points off, then you can get your title in 4 runs. And then there are ways to get bonus points. So if you have a best of breed, you get an additional 5 points. And if you happen to go like high in trial, like for that class that you're entered, you get an additional 5 points as well. So there is, like, if you happen to be best of breed and high in trial, 3 times in a row, and that's 35 times 3, right? Then you could get your title at 100 points and get it that way. But for the most part, you're going to be looking at needing like 4 qualifying scores to get it. So that's for like level 1 titles. And then as you move up the level, so to get like a level 2, you need to accumulate, I want to say it's different for every level. Sorry, where are my notes? Level 2, you need your level 1 title plus 400 points. So it's quite a big jump in terms of how many qualifying scores you need to get to that level 2 title. Cool. Yeah, and then there is a puppy aptitude test as well, which is for puppies that are between 4 months and 9 months, which is kind of fun because there are very, very few sports that you can compete in with puppies that are under 6 months. Most sports, it's like 6 months is your minimum. To compete in the regular classes in this, they need to be 6 months. But this puppy aptitude test is a one-time sort of pass or fail. If they pass, they have their title, and that's available in Lost Item and Urban Locate and Trail Locate and Shed Hunt. So I got to see some, when I was last in Alberta, there was quite a few puppies. Cool. It was really fun to watch them. Yeah, so there's those puppy aptitude tests as well, just to sort of get your feet wet. But yeah, there's lots of options. This goes, they all go from level 1 through 3 to Master Champion and Grand Champion, and it can really, really keep going. Obviously, hard to do that in a country where it's just starting to grow. There's not that many Grand Champion dogs. I think there's only a handful in like each of the areas, just because it's so many points to accumulate. Right. Yeah, it's fun. The dogs just love it. Really like it.
Cool. Well, that's exciting. Kind of feels like we could talk all day about it.
Oh, I could. Yeah, I
could. But we should probably let you go. Is there anything else that you want to say about it, or any particular reason? Well, you already sort of talked about why you love the organization so much. So
yeah, I should mention one of the other classes that's new. Okay. So they're called Urban Challenge class or Urban Challenge games, which fall under they're similar to the Urban Locate. So you remember the Urban Locate would be like a horse stall, or like a smaller, I don't know, a classroom or something like that. So not a huge space, indoors usually is what it is. And these Urban Challenge classes, I find these are they're trying to, I don't know what they're trying to do, but they're comparable to kind of like barn hunt and scent detection. So in these urban challenge games, all the hides are blind. So that means that the handler doesn't know where they are. The judge is still the one that says yes when the dog has gotten close to it, but the handler doesn't know where they are. And there's 6 different challenge games. Actually, I'm going to get them wrong if I don't look at my notes. So there's a distance challenge. So for those of you familiar with sea wags, there is, so that's similar to the ranger titles, where you have to be like, there's a handler line that you can not go past. There is one where you make the call. So in that one, you are the one, instead of the judge saying yes, actually the handler gets to do it. So people are already done barn hunt or scent detection, then it shouldn't be a huge jump. Elusive rats. So the quarry is elevated or inaccessible. So that's like a bit of a tougher one. Got rat, which is the handler calls alert rat or finish and clear. So there may or may not be a rat in that search area.
Oh.
So it's kind of setting you up to, have to call clear or finish on areas there might not be a quarry to find. And that these are sort of games that all mess with sort of the handler's head too. So there's a game called Silence. So you can give your dog a cue at the start line, but after that, nothing. So no more cues. So you can say search or rats. I use rats. And then after that, nothing. You can use hand signals. You could sort of like, come on over here, but you have to be quiet. And then roll of the dice is you roll a dice or a random draw to have 2 of the above 5 games combined. So it could be distance and silence combined. So you can't go across your handler line and you can't talk to your dog. So these games, like once you wrap around your head around the rules, they're actually really fun. I really, really like them. And so then there can be distractions as well. So there can be like toy distractions depending on the level. So those are like the urban challenge games are pretty new. I think they were introduced in the beginning of 2022. I'm not 100% sure. But so they're just starting to sort of gain some steam in Canada because they're pretty brand new. But I really like them. But that's coming from a scent detection and barn hunt and all that kind of stuff. I kind of like the additional challenge.
Well, it's kind of interesting because I've heard a few people say they don't want to do the barn hunt or the ratting because they're so hardcore into the nose work that they don't want to have that extra distraction. So that's kind of cool to sort of cross over.
Yeah, like so these are all, there's always for rats. So this is only for like the game, right. Like they're looking for rats. But it is I think they were really drawing on barn hunt and some of the scent detection in terms of some of the new games that are out there. And so it is like there's lots of people that play both. Some don't. I mean, I've had a lot of issues in barn hunt personally with my younger dog thinking that it's scent detection. I don't know why. Like he knows what the rats are. But he's just like, nope, I showed up to scent detection today, and he's working and he's happy, but he's just unsure about what we showed up for today. Other people have other issues. They started in barn hunt and then they go to scent detection and they have trouble with their dog, destroying hides or things like that. So there's some dogs cross over very seamlessly. Others don't. Barn hunt is very different equipment wise. I'm not sure if you're going to have someone on eventually to talk about barn hunt.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, well, she'll go over about all that stuff about why it's different. But yeah, it's all fun. It's all fun and games. The more the merrier. I think it's all. I really like it. But this one, I think the appeal also for me is the trials I've been to, at least in Alberta, they offer most of it. Mm-hmm. So it's not just rats. So it's not like barn hunt where we're just going and searching for rats. I can enter in a weekend and we're doing shed hunting, we're doing lost item, and we're doing like the ratting stuff as well. And so we kind of get to do it all, like, especially for me, where, where we live, anytime you travel, you sort of try and pack in as much as you can. The most bang for your buck, basically. Yeah. So I like that. That might not be for everyone. Some people might find it overwhelming trying to switch to all the different things. But I like it in that regard.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we will put your contact info in the membership as well, so that if people want to contact you for any training or whatever, I know some of them are close to you and some of them are not. But yeah,
have rats will travel. That's sort of the plan. They travel well. But yeah, I look forward to everyone's questions for sure.
Yeah, so everybody write your questions down, and we'll do a live Q&A with Alycia later in the month. We'll figure out a time that works for the most people. And if you can't make it, just put your questions either in the Facebook group or in the membership, and she will answer them, and you can watch it later. And yeah, I don't know. Do you have any other?
Nope, I think we got to cut it off. I just keep going. Keep going. Okay, in the Q&A, we'll have like lots of time to go.
Yes.
Go on my tangents, I'm sure.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
And I'll talk to you after we're done this, but
yeah, no, we'll see everyone soon.
Okay, see you.